feel that you deviated from how you should behave when you said of I think it was Mishra in the New York Review of Books?
No.
That, well, let me just share what you said,
okay.
which is, I'm trying to be precise in my speech, but I believe you said, you're a what did you say? That you were, if you were in, if you, sanctimonious prick, and if you were in the room.
I'd slap you.
Yeah, so you don't regret that?
Not a bit.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Well, look, it's really complicated, you know. I have this friend who's a native carver, and he comes from a very rough background, like way rougher than you think. And maybe some of you have come from rough backgrounds, or you know people who've come from them, but he comes from a plenty rough background. And I started working with him, buying his art 15 years ago, and he was a survivor of residential schools in Canada, and we got pretty close, and he helped me design the 3rd floor of my house, and anyways, the long and short of it was that I got inducted into his family about 2.5 years ago in this big ceremony up in a native reservation in northern Vancouver. And you know, we've been through a lot together, and a lot of it's been pretty rough. And you know, this, whatever the hell his name was, Mishraj, or whatever the hell his name was, had the temerity to say that I was romancing the noble savage. It's like, watch your step, buddy. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, not even a bit. And so had I been a left-leaning personage, and he had made a comment like that, there would have been hell to pay. So, which isn't to say that I'm a right-leaning personage, by the way. So I don't regret it a bit. I think that what he said was absolutely reprehensible, and that he should have been called out on it. And so I don't regret it at all. Now, people said, you know, maybe it would have been better for me not to have made that comment, and it's possible that they're right. But I actually thought about it, and I thought, there's no excuse for that. You don't know what you're talking about. You're meddling with things you don't understand. And you're making a casual aspersion, not only on me, but on my noble savage friend. It's like, yeah, no.
So speaking of things that people have said sort of to defame you, you're currently suing Wilfrid Laurier University because, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think administrators there in their meeting with Lindsay Shepherd, who was a TA who showed a clip of you, they sort of interrogated her, accusing her of creating a hostile teaching environment for showing a clip of you in her classroom. And during that interaction, which she recorded, they compared you to Hitler.
No, they compared me to Hitler or Milo Yiannopoulos.
Excuse me.
Right, no, it's important. And the reason it's important is because, look, these people, one of them was...
And just to finish that question, maybe you'll braid this in. Yeah. You are one of the most outspoken champions, I would say, of free speech right now. I would like for you, if you can, to sort of grapple a bit with believing in free speech so strongly, and yet also suing this university for slander.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so first of all, they compared me to, they said playing a clip of Jordan Peterson was like playing a clip of Hitler or Milo Yiannopoulos. And I thought, well, let's go a little easy on the Hitler comparisons there. Guys, we might want to save that for when it's really necessary. Because you don't use, it's sacrilegious to use an insult like that, except in situations where it's justified. It's not appropriate to use a catastrophe like that casually, especially when you're doing it under the guise of moral virtue. There's no excuse for it. And then the second thing is, you're a professor, both of you. Get your damn words straight. Which is it? My Hitler or Milo Yiannopoulos? Seriously, those are not the same people, in case you didn't notice. One of them was the worst barbarian in the 20th century, with the possible exception of Stalin and Mao, and the other one is a provocateur, trickster, who's quite quick on his feet and is, what would you say, is stirring things up in a relatively non-problematic way. They're not the same creature. And so to combine them in a single careless insult during an administrative, what would you call, investigation, which was entirely unwarranted, by the way, and was predicated on an absolute lie. There hadn't been a student complaint, as the university admitted. There was no excuse for that. And if they weren't professors, then, well, it wouldn't have been so bad, but they were. And the reason that I sued them, there's a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, The Hitler comparison and the Milo Yiannopoulos comparison were only 2 of about 40 things that they tarred me with. And they're all listed in the deposition. And the only reason I brought the lawsuit forward, 7 months later, something like that, was because of what happened with Lindsay Shepherd. So what happened to her at Wilfrid Laurier is absolutely inexcusable. Everything they did to her was predicated on a lie. Then the university apologized, and so did the professor. And then he lied during his apology, which was a forced apology anyways, and therefore of very little utility. They were subject to no disciplinary action, even though the statutes of the university required it. And they made Lindsay Shepherd's life a living hell, even after they apologized to her and told her that she did nothing wrong and that they hadn't followed their own procedures. So I read her deposition, and I actually read it on YouTube, where it's got about 500,000 views, by the way. And I thought, you people haven't learned anything. You've learned absolutely nothing. And so if one lawsuit doesn't convince you, maybe 2 will. So, and then with regards to free speech, it's like free speech is still bounded inside a structure of law. And these people broke the law, or at least that's my claim. So I don't see the contradiction there at all. You can't just slander someone, defame them, lie about them. You can't incite people to crime. There's all sorts of reasonable restrictions on free speech that are already codified essentially in the British common law system. So, but Wilfrid Laurier learned nothing. But this isn't over yet.
But isn't it creating a chilling effect, which is something that those of us care so much about free speech want to sort of stay away from? You could say that these sort of defamation lawsuits are a really, really dangerous slippery slope. And I'm sort of surprised you don't see it that way.
Well, you know, I do see it that way, which is why I spent 7 months thinking about it before I decided to do it. But I thought that there's always risk in every decision. There's the risk of doing something, and there's the risk of not doing something. And both of those risks are usually catastrophic in every decision you make in life. It's like I weighed up the risks, and I thought, no, the risk here of not doing something is greater than the risk of doing something. Had they shown any sign, look, one of the things that Wilfrid Laurier did in the aftermath of this scandal, which by the way was the biggest scandal that ever hit a Canadian university by a large margin, and it was an international scandal. I rarely go places where people haven't heard about this. And so it was a big deal, and they had plenty to learn, and they learned nothing. They set up a panel, hypothetically, to clarify their position on free speech and its relationship to inclusivity, etc. And the only 2 people on the panel who were advocating for the free speech position resigned in frustration. And I know that because I know who they are. And so well, that's just one of the pieces of evidence that they didn't learn anything. And then they continued to mistreat Shepherd continually. Like her deposition, it's like a novel of stupidity. You know, it's like, and my sense was, had there been any sign whatsoever of, let's call it, true apology and procedural rectification, that she would have left them alone, and so would have I. But there was 0. In fact, if anything, what they did was double down and go underground. Here's our apology. Here's our procedures. That's what they showed the world. Here's how nothing at all has changed. It's like, no, not good enough.